May 25th, Shu Yonghai. Rejoicing in suffering means more than just bearing it. In 1997, Shu Yonghai wrote an article about house churches for Chinese Christians, and it cost him 2 years in prison. He did 2 years of hard labor. He served 2 years with no trial, mandated by police authority, not the judicial system. This was the labor re-education system in action. When he was released, undeterred, he continued his work for the Lord. He had a respectable job as a doctor, and in everything he did, he demonstrated unusual love and concern for others. But in 2003, he faced another 2-year sentence, and he was once again thrust into isolation from his brothers and sisters in Christ. In prison, the police placed Shu Yonghai in one room for work during the day and a different room for sleep at night. Both rooms were designed to reduce his contact with other prisoners, and the rooms came equipped with nasty insults, physical assault, sparse meals, and heavy labor. The work started at 6 in the morning and often continued until 8 or 9 at night, sometimes even later. But even this was nothing compared to the pain of missing his wife. That was unbearable. He longed to continue his daily practice of reading and studying the Bible, but in prison it was hard to get one. In November, he wrote to his wife to send a copy of the Bible to him in prison. The police told him, "In prison you can't read the Bible." "Why?" he asked. "The Code of Conduct for Prisoners stipulates you cannot practice and spread cults." "Christianity is not a cult," Shu Yonghai said. "The Bible is legal here. If you won't let my wife send me one, once I'm released from prison, I'll have to tell people that Chinese prisons don't even let me read the Bible." "I have to consult higher authorities," the guard said. It took a few months for the guard to consult the higher authorities. In February, the guard returned and gave Shu permission to ask for the Bible from home. "Don't preach it to others, though," he said. So, Shu Yonghai got a Bible and read it often to receive comfort from the Word. He had heard of many other brothers and sisters imprisoned for their faith who had believed they could not read the Bible and could not receive that comfort. But he didn't want to lose hope without a fight. One of the passages that especially strengthened him was this: "Dear friends, do not be surprised at the fiery ordeal that has come on you to test you, as though something strange were happening to you. But rejoice inasmuch as you participate in the sufferings of Christ, so that you may be overjoyed when his glory is revealed." 1 Peter 4:12 and 13. The daily reassurance from the Word gave Shu Yonghai hope in his suffering and allowed him to remember the joy of Christ all the way until his release. Today, how can you renew your hope in Christ? Rejoicing in suffering means more than just bearing it.
Well, hey man, this is Eric Bloom, one of the pastors at Landing Place Church in Commerce City, Colorado. Listening to Shu Yonghai's story is definitely one of those, like, man, I have not experienced something like that in my life, and I kind of think, like, man, how did you do it? Like, how did you go through prison just with that attitude and to be able to rejoice in the midst of those circumstances? And I'm reminded throughout his story that the fruit of the Spirit, especially joy that is so evident in his story, is a byproduct of being close to the Spirit, that the Spirit is the one who renders that work within us. And thus, in the midst of circumstances where we should not have a feeling of lightness, the Spirit brings about that lightness. And so that's how we can be commanded to rejoice in the midst of hard things and be filled by the Spirit in order to be able to do those things. Because it's when we are close to the Spirit, even when the mind is racing, the mind is spinning, and the heart is racing, and the gut is wrenching, that we can have this sense of lightness in the midst of those things, where God refreshes us with his Spirit. And so, man, I want to ask you today, how do you need to be refreshed? What in your life right now needs attention to where you just need some refreshment? And also, have you let God into that space in your life? Or are you just trying to power through and make it happen? One of the ways that we could start to let God into that space is through confession. To when we confess where we need him, that is the prerequisite to experience his refreshment, which leads to that rejoicing.